Andrew Refkin, whose .earth blog you can read in the New York Times. Thank you for speaking with us here on France 24.
It's great to be with you.
Anything you can say after that report to lighten the mood in Marrakesh?
Well, I wrote the day that the election results came out last Wednesday. I wrote a piece that focused on some, it's funny what you call hopeful. There are hints and possibilities that things might not be dreadful. One is that while Myron Ebell was put in charge of the transition team, and he works for a libertarian organization right now
with oil funding.
Oh yeah, with coal, but very much focusing on limited government, limited regulation. Absolutely. And I first wrote about Myron in 2001, way back when George Bush's first term in office was just beginning. And he's been in that mix forever, but he's not at the level of the kind of person that would end up being the administrator. So I would be amazed if he is put forward as the candidate to run the office. Not that that doesn't mean that we're off the hook for having serious consequences. There, as you heard, and as others have written already, there's many things President Trump can do once he's president to slow U.S. The rate of reduction in emissions here. There's some things, though, that he can't really do. What I wrote last Wednesday partially was that the climate problem and climate solutions are both bigger than any single president. And 98% of the growth in emissions, should it come, will be coming in developing countries, not in the United States. Our emissions and the reductions in emissions here, while President Obama can rightly say they occurred on his watch, to a significant extent, the drivers of those reductions were the market and the emergence of natural gas as a much cheaper alternative to coal, and that was happening. So that's why our emissions here dropped substantially in recent years.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that, Andrew, because I've seen the argument put forth, and you're making it that. Donald Trump can say what he wants, but in the United States, the private sector has already gone green.
Well, yeah, that's the other factor. Renewable energy growth, by the way, which is supported substantially by a lot of conservatives. One of the most interesting reports I saw last year here came from the heart of Oklahoma, from a county that had been identified as the single most skeptical county in America when it came to global warming as a danger. This reporter from CNN, John Sutter, did a great video report there that showed that even some oil and gas executive he interviewed said, "Oh yeah, we have half of our roof covered in solar panels, and we want to do the rest because we want to get off the grid entirely." Now, and his thinking, this is a guy who just a minute earlier said, "Well, God controls the climate." So obviously, he's not doing that for the sake of the climate system, but he's doing that because he doesn't like to be beholden to anybody. He's a true American, individualist, a libertarian. And for him, being able to not pay checks to a utility is just as important as to not have President Obama, in his case, running his life in some way. So that enthusiasm for renewables is not just from the climate green movement. And that's one reason why I think, and again, the next few weeks, the next month or so, will determine clearly whether Donald Trump will move toward that sort of progressive-ish stance on clean energy.
Yeah, except that
and which Trump actually, when he was answering questions from this group called Science Debate, his campaign sent in the answer. I had it here somewhere, that perhaps. Give me a second. It's worth reciting this. I had it on another screen. Well, anyway, he said perhaps it's worth moving away, that we need to chart a path toward renewable energy so we're not always dependent on fossil fuels.
And yet he did send out that tweet saying on the campaign trail, which is about how this was a hoax perpetrated by the Chinese. And
that tweet comes from like 2 or 3 years ago.
And Andrew, we're seeing among the people tapped to be his energy secretary are people from North Dakota favorable to oil drilling. Yeah. They've even talked about Sarah Palin as the interior secretary.
Oh, I know. The worst case outcome boggles the mind. It harks back to some of the choices made by Ronald Reagan for Interior Secretary. So I'm saying stay tuned. Just like the report from one of your reports said, I think there is some wiggle room toward reasonableness here, but there is also substantial reason to be very worried that things could go in the other direction. Overall, the climate system and the energy needs of the planet are not in anyone's direct control, and that was what made Paris such a sort of flexible, non-binding agreement in many ways, and that's why it's vulnerable to this kind of fluctuation in policy in a country like the United States.